Hello, this is Wyatt Ciesielka for Tomorrow's World. An October 26, 2014 Associated Press article caught my attention. It was titled, "Israeli Farmers Observe Sabbatical with a Wink." It read in part, "Every 7 years, according to the Bible, Israeli farmers must give their lands a rest for a year. So how do modern-day growers reconcile the ancient spiritual practice with a need to feed the country's 8 million mouths? Most market their produce thanks to a clever workaround. They temporarily sold their farms, valued together at $33 billion, to a 25-year-old non-Jewish telemarketer named George. I own all these lands, and I don't even own an apartment," joked George, an immigrant from St. Petersburg, Russia. The 7-year sabbatical, called Shemitah in Hebrew, began last month on the Jewish New Year and extends through the fall of 2015. The article continued, though only a minority of the Israeli population abides by strict Jewish religious law, nearly all Israeli Jewish farmers choose to follow the biblical directive, in part so they don't lose their Orthodox customers' business. Most of the rest opted for George. They sold their farms to the government, and last month, over cookies and orange juice, the government sold the lands to George, turning the non-Jewish telemarketer into one of Israel's biggest private landowners. Technically, the year-long sale is legally binding. In practice, it is symbolic. The article continued, he didn't even take home a copy of the contract. He said he paid 2,000 shekels, or about $540, for the land, with money gifted to him by an official involved in the ceremony. Well, that's a creative way to observe the biblical sabbatical year and the biblical land rest. But what is this sabbatical year? And what is this that the article is referring to? I'd like to read from another article from Tomorrow's World. This is from the Tomorrow's World website, and the article is titled, "Lifting the Burden of Poverty." You'll find that poverty and God's generosity toward people and the sabbatical land rest are entwined. In Exodus 23, we read that God established a sabbatical year, the article begins, that was to occur every 7 years. During the 7th year, fields were to lie fallow, observing a land Sabbath to replenish the soil. The article continues, during this year that we find in Leviticus 25, that the poor could eat whatever grew on those fields. This 7th year was called a year of release because all debts were canceled and all bondservants were set free with enough resources for a fresh start in life. If this principle were followed today, a huge burden of debt would be lifted from the shoulders of billions of people around the world, and they would have a new lease on life, the article concludes. Will this type of system of rest and release from debt be reinstituted in the kingdom of God in the future? Yes, but not with the creative approach that many of the Israeli farmers appear to be taking today. Notice it was not just the land that rested or that had relief. It was also people and society that got rest or relief under the sabbatical year system. God is a loving God, and although economists today would scoff and say that based on his laws we could not have a functioning economy, God's law works, and God's law is a law of economic mercy. The kingdom of God will start with a 1,000-year reign of Christ on this earth. Christ will be the King of Kings, and God's laws will be taught and followed in that coming kingdom. We read in Isaiah 2, verses 2 through 4, "Now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house," meaning God's government, "shall be established on the top of the mountains," meaning on top of all the world's governments, "and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. Many people shall come and say, 'Come, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, and we shall walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between nations, and rebuke many people. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." We look forward to the kingdom of God on this earth, when God's laws will be followed and will be a blessing for all people. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. For more information, video, material on these biblical and news topics, please visit us on Facebook or at tomorrowsworld.org.